Okay, here's a fill in the blank for our notes for today, kind of going through our Exploring Rate of Change worksheet. Didn't record this with audio, so just kind of give you a heads up. You can start and pause it as much as you need just to kind of keep up. Okay, here what we're doing is we're trying to just do through a practice example, just of how you would calculate the monthly cost, the total cost, based off of our sample plan, which was $5.99 per month for the first 300 minutes, and then 5 cents a message after that. So we're just kind of walking through that. Okay, here we're looking at the unlimited plan. The unlimited plan was $24.99 per month, unlimited number of texts. So we're just going to slowly fill out our table. And after we fill out our table, we'll graph it and we'll discuss what's going on. Now we're looking at Plan B. It says Plan A, but it's Plan B. We'll change that. And we're going to, the description here is now it's 5 cents per text message, period, and we're going to bill it per month. So again, we're going to start filling out our table, and then we're going to graph that and discuss it. And the emphasis on this was the fact that on the last slide, the cost was constant, but now the cost is changing. But as you can tell, the rate that it changes is constant. So that was important that it was a constant rate. Here's our third plan. The third plan is a $9.99 per month plan for 750 messages, but then an additional 5 cents for everything over 750. So again, we start off the same way. Once again, we recognize that we have a constant rate for a while. Here, I hope you recognize at the top what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, we had 50 extra minutes. We went over by 50. When we did 800, it was over our limit by 50. So we found out how much 50 was. It's 50 times a nickel, 0.05, which gave us $2.50. So we were going to add that 250 to our $9.99, and mathematically, when you put all of that together, this is the operations that we were doing. And again, I did that in a backwards order, but here's the work that we showed. Here's the work that would show that our new cost is $22.49.
You're talking to yourself, or you're talking to someone, I couldn't decide.
Again, all we're doing here is we used this formula, this algorithm to figure out our cost, and once we had a clearly established pattern, we just went ahead and went on up. Here I wanted to talk about the domain. I noticed that the graphs were in two different sections. So this blue section was definitely a constant section, and we decided that that was between 0 and 750 text messages. Whereas from 750 up was an entirely different line. So we're just kind of setting you up for some work you're going to do in Math 2 and Math 3 when we talk about pieces of a function. Instead of just having one function, we talk about pieces of a function. We just went through and started answering some problems now. Now what's not showing up here, because I wasn't recording earlier, is we kept flipping back and forth and looking at the graphs and talking about them. But we recognize that Plan A has a 0 rate of change, so it's $0 per text. That's how much they charge you. For Plan B, it ends up being that first two. It's $10 for every 200, which is 5 cents a text, which should not be a surprise. And then Plan C got a little more tricky because we recognized we had two sections again. We had that first section when it was less than 750. It did end up being just like Plan A. It was $0 per text that they charged you. But then once you got over 750, then they did start charging you, and it was again 10 over 200, which is the same as a nickel per text. On question 2, once again, we kept flipping back and forth to the graphs, and you recognize that Plan A crossed the graph at $24.99. Plan B's y-intercept was 0, and Plan C's was $9.99. And through discussion, we decided that that was always the initial value, the value of the plan, regardless of the number of text messages you sent. Question 3 here, we went back and looked at graph for Plan A and Plan B, and exactly what we wrote down at the bottom of that. We talked about how Plan A had a constant cost, but Plan B was changing at a constant rate, so slightly different idea. Writing an equation here, we had to go back and look. To start with, on Plan A, we realized that Plan A had a cost of $24.99, but there ended up being no variable with that. So it was important to recognize that even though it's not as pretty, C equals 24.99 is an equation, just doesn't have a variable. For Plan B, we realized that what we did was we went back and looked at our table, and where we showed our work on the table, we recognized that we kept doing the same thing over and over. We kept doing 0.05 times a text message, 0.05 times a text message, and that's where the equation for Plan B came from. Plan C, once again, we looked at the table from Plan C, and identical to Plan B, we realized by looking at the table that we just repeated the same work we were doing over and over again. Especially important on the second part is what we were doing. We were adding $9.99 plus that 0.05 times the text message. So you can look back on the table on Plan C and see that. For 6, we went through every single equation, and we determined that for 100 messages, which one was going to be the best deal. Really, it's just using these 3 equations up here, or using the graphs from earlier to determine it. It's pretty straightforward. All right, and our last question is actually question 7 down at the bottom. what we did on question 7, we had a choice to go back and look at our graphs. We never really put it on the same graph. We just kind of kept flipping back and forth the graphs, but I eventually did put it on the same graph for everybody to see. And I'm trying to think, that should be here. So here was plan A. Plan A was a constant line. Plan B was that one that went at a diagonal, and we just put them on the same one. And we talked about the fact that here, plan B is cheaper than plan A till 200 minutes, till 400 minutes, till somewhere around 500, and then plan A becomes cheaper. So then we put on plan C, and we graphed plan C. And at that point, we decided that we would follow the lowest cost curve. So we would follow the curve that was the lowest at all times, and that would be the plan we would choose, and that would be the advice we would give a friend. Of course, it would look like this. From 0 to 200, you follow plan, this first plan, this is plan B. From 200 to 1,000, that should say 1,000, not 100. From 200 to 1,000, you follow plan C, and then after 1,000, you switch and you follow plan A. And that would be the advice we would give.